Hello and welcome everyone to Building SaaS on AWS, a special edition that we are bringing you here today. This, of course, being the AWS SaaS Factory show for builders of SaaS here on Twitch. My name is Anthony McClure, and I am a solutions architect with the AWS SaaS Factory team and your host for today's show. If you are currently a builder of software as a service solutions, or are just getting started and learning how to build, design, deploy, and operate applications inside of multi-tenant environments, then this is the show for you. In today's show, we actually have a very special show in which we are introducing a brand new capability that the AWS SaaS Factory and the AWS community has put together in order to help our customers to build SaaS or continue to build SaaS on AWS. So without any further ado, let's get on into it today. And I would like to introduce our first guests for today, as I would like to introduce to the stage Rupesh Nara, Toby Buckley, and Ujjwal Buka. Welcome everybody to the show.
Hey guys.
Hey. Why don't we go ahead and start out today by just a quick introduction by everybody here. First of all, welcome. These are all my colleagues from the AWS SaaS Factory, so thank you so much for being here today. Ujjwal, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Thanks, Anthony. Myself, Ujjwal Buka. I am a partner solution architect from AWS SaaS Factory team. I've been with Amazon for more than 5 years now, helping various enterprises and ISVs with their SaaS journey. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Rupesh, you want to go next?
Hey, thanks, Anthony. Thanks for having us here today. I'm Rupesh Nara. I'm a technical program manager at SaaS Factory team. I've been with Amazon for over 3 years now.
Thank you, Rupesh. And Toby.
And Toby. I'm same as all these guys. Been with SaaS Factory for now 4 years, some change. All of that time at AWS has been spent at SaaS Factory. So yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having us, Anthony.
Excellent. Thank you for being here, all of you. So let's just jump on into this. We are introducing today a new capability and a new solution that we're providing out to the community called the SaaS Builder Toolkit. Ujjwal, let's start with you today. Can you just describe what exactly is the SaaS Builder Toolkit?
So we call this SaaS Builder Toolkit in a short abbreviated form as SBT. So we'd be using this a lot of times. So just wanted to lay that ground out there. So SBT stands for SaaS Builder Toolkit. It's basically a one-stop shop for these SaaS architects or developers, where they could explore, learn, and understand various SaaS best practices through concrete implemented components. These components are nothing but an open source components, which are a CDK constructs where we packaged a SaaS best practice into these components so that these architects or developers can pull in these components into their architecture, which will help them resolve a particular SaaS architecture challenge and build a robust SaaS architecture. So by doing that, what we are trying to help with is basically accelerating their development process, where they could get these pre-built components and then accelerate their SaaS product development, which in turn accelerates their time to value. And also, and the other angle to it is it provides a platform for independent software vendors where they could build these extensions, which will foster a rich ecosystem where again, these are SaaS architectures, or whoever is building a SaaS architecture can pull in these components based on their requirements and enrich their architecture to build a robust architecture here. And again, these things would be more clear as we progress into the show here. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we used CDK to build these constructs or these open source components. So you get all the richness and goodness of features of the CDK. So that's how we could briefly define SBT or SaaS Builder Toolkit.
Interesting. So, thinking back over what we've talked about in the past, and Ujjwal is a multi-time veteran of coming on this show. We've talked before about the serverless SaaS reference solution. We've talked about our EKS-based reference solution. Is this similar to that in some ways?
So yes, in the sense, when you compare with the serverless reference solution and these solutions, where we are trying to tell you the best practices around those things. But now, if you go peel the onions into it, we kind of componentizing those things. So if you think about in a serverless reference solution or EKS, the common patterns, what you see is the control plane and application plane, which we keep on talking about those things. So now we are kind of creating components for these control planes and application planes, and then also a lot of other things, where a SaaS architect would, obviously when they're building a SaaS architecture solution, they have to think about these constructs or these best practices. So we are kind of like packaging these best practice as a component so that they can pull into their architecture and build it.
Yeah, the other point that we'll see, and I'll just throw in there that later, is that, to the question of whether or not it's similar to the reference architectures, I'd say yes, in so much as it creates a foundation for building those architectures.
That makes sense.
And also, just to add, these reference architectures are more like an end-to-end solutions that we have built so far. But based on the feedback that we got from our customers, they're looking for more modular solutions. Like, that's the whole reason why we went with this whole componentized part of SBT.
So SBT, in theory, you could use SBT to build out one of these reference solutions, essentially using components of it to help you build your own in that case, which is the overall point that we're looking at, right?
Right.
So also want to make a quick hello to everybody that has joined us in chat this morning. Welcome to all of you. We actually have a little bit of a funny comment that came in from Kip IT100 as a stream that's not focused on Gen AI. Praise be. Yes, of course, Gen AI kind of dominates the landscape these days. But we at SaaS Factory want to make sure that we're focused on the core fundamentals of SaaS as well. And so working on this toolkit has been very exciting to us, and we're happy to bring it to you. But thank you for that comment. If you are joining us here today on or in our live stream on Twitch, please feel free to say hello. Let us know where you're from, and make sure to say hi to Bill Tarr, who is once again acting as our moderator today. So continuing on with our conversation about SBT, then, I think we've got a little bit of this, an understanding of what we were going for with it. But why did we decide to do this now? Why did SaaS Factory decide to take this on?
Sure, Anthony. So now here I'll give you to answer this question, let's step back a little bit, and I'll try to give you a little bit of long answer. So just bear with me here. So when you out there, when you're building a SaaS solution, you realize that there is no one size fits all blueprint to build a SaaS. So what you have to do is based upon your requirement, you have to come up with your SaaS architecture and build your architecture. So when you venture that area or venture that path, what you usually do is you try to explore and learn what are the different moving parts I need to build or incorporate into my SaaS architecture. Then you kind of identify that there are some architecture challenges which you need to address when you build a SaaS architecture. Like, for example, those SaaS architecture challenges can be identity management, tenant isolation, noisy neighbor, or cost per tenant, and so on and so forth. So what I'm trying to say there is let's say if you take the tenant isolation, you need to build an architecture which enforces this tenant isolation. So that's one kind of a SaaS architecture challenge. So once you identify these challenges, you realize that each of them is a vast topic, and you pick one topic like identity management, you go deeper into it and try to understand what are the best practices and how do I can implement those best practices. Let's call this as more as a discovery phase. And once you are done with the discovery phase, you move to a design phase where you kind of implement an architecture based on what you learned, and then move to a development phase where you kind of develop and deploy your solution. Once you deploy your solution, what you will realize that it does not exactly meet your requirements, it deviated from your thought process or what you envisioned, or it does not meet your SaaS best practice. So then you go back to this loop again or the cycle of discover, design, and development, and you keep on repeating that until you get the desired results. Mm-hmm. Now, with the introduction of SBT, where we are providing you a comprehensive solution which will help you to not only help you to resolve these SaaS architecture challenges, but also helps you to accelerate this whole discovery, design, and development phase. So the discovery phase, where it's a one-stop shop for you, the SBT is a one-stop shop where you could look at different SaaS best practices. And for the design and the development phase, we are kind of providing you pre-built components where you can easily pull in these components and resolve this architecture challenge and build a robust SaaS architecture. So that's one of the major reasons why we kind of try to put it out this SBT solution. And another angle to it is it provides a platform where independent software vendors can build extensions. So if you look at these SaaS architectures who are building these architectures, they will have specific needs, and there are rich ISV providers out there who has their rich products which solves particular challenge. So this SBT provides an extension or provides a platform where they could build extensions so that these SaaS architectures can easily consume that and build a rich SaaS architecture or a robust SaaS architecture. So yeah, those are some of the reasons why we can build this SBT.
And just as a little hint, we'll have a little bit more on that particular subject a little bit later on in the show, as well, as far as extending out the architecture too, correct?
Yeah, and we do have, and I want to keep that as a surprise here, but yes, we can double down a little bit more on that, how a particular ISV integration can enrich your, the SBT stuff, and we have some
awesome
goodies out there. Yeah.
So, looking at this then from the perspective of our customers, right? Who do we really see that this new capability that we built out is really for? Who do we see actually, or who do we feel would actually benefit from using this?
Yeah, I'd kind of classify a few of them. So one, obviously the SaaS architects and developers who want to build a SaaS architecture. So basically, we'll help them with these pre-built components which will help them to resolve a particular SaaS architecture challenge, where they could just easily consume it and build their architecture. And the other
like
set of
the one-off pieces, or looking for a particular component, for instance, as part of the architecture.
Yeah, I'm kind of keeping it at the 200 level, so that I don't steal the thunder of what Toby and the rest of the team is going to show it. But it's it's CDK, as I said, CDK, where you could easily pull in and then do that particular which will resolve or which will package a particular SaaS best practice. And another set of audience is independent software vendors, where it kind of provides a platform where they could build an extension. And again, the goal here is to help or accelerate the journey of SaaS architectures, where they could resolve their particular challenge by using these extensions which are provided by ISVs. So we kind of it gives a platform there. That's one set of audience. And another is any enterprise or business who are trying to build a SaaS solution. And using SBT, it provides them a good starting point, which kind of accelerates their development process and SaaS product development, and hence it accelerates their time to value. And again, the other set of audience I would categorize is AWS open source community, where this provides a platform for this AWS SaaS community, where they could build extensions on top of this SBT, which will be leveraged by any other SaaS consumers. Like, for example, if you are building a SaaS solution in a specific industry or for a specific requirement, you would come up with your own specific architecture. Once you're done with that, if you realize that there is some piece of this architecture which I could carve out and which will be useful for rest of the other community, they could build a component using the SBT concepts, and then they can publish that out there in the SBT ecosystem, so that other customers in that space or in that industry can pull those components and use it. So we kind of providing a platform for that. So these are some of the audience, categorize. These are a set of the different audience which we would see would help, SBT would help them.
Excellent.
So in a nutshell, if you want to summarize what Ujjwal has said, right? Like, if you are a SaaS application builder, if you're running into any challenges, or if you want to understand what are the best practices that AWS SaaS Factory recommends, SBT is the solution where you can find those best practices on how it is actually implemented, so you can use it in your solutions.
Yeah, so you're getting best of breed out of the box here, and all of the accumulated knowledge that we've put together at the AWS SaaS Factory on building SaaS on AWS by utilizing these components. Then
totally.
And really, yeah, and the punchline there is really trying to accelerate time to value, right? We're trying to get you there quicker. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. So, all right, so we've talked about kind of the high level. We've talked about who this is really for and what we're aiming for with the solution. But I think it's time to actually get in and start seeing some of the nitty gritty of how this is put together, how we use this, what the architecture looks like. So can we talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, let's do it. I got some slides queued up. I think we got 3 or 4 slides we'll go over, and then dive maybe in some code.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we love that. Thanks, Zoe.
I'm on one monitor, so I can't see if you've got me on screen. So I'm hoping.
Yeah, you're good. You're good to go, I think, at this point. Yep.
Cool. So here we're just looking at the conceptual blocks and lines of SBT. Right on the left, we won't talk too much about that today. So you've got the CLI and the API just know that we've effectively separated the two planes of a SaaS application, one of which is the control plane, obviously here on the left. All those little blue boxes in there are the things that we saw over and over again as we're starting to develop these things, develop reference architectures or other components, right? We're starting to see, the identity over and over again, perhaps, or the onboarding processes. And so we kind of took a look at that and said, well, to Ujjal's point earlier, we know that there's no blueprint, there's no factory that you could just kind of stand in front of this and crank out SaaS applications, but there is probably an opportunity to pull some of this boilerplate out into reusable components. And that's really what we're endeavoring to do here. So on the left, you see the things that we are concerned with building SaaS in the control plane. Again, reusing over and over again. And on the right is your SaaS application, all the stuff that that is your secret sauce, right? As a SaaS builder, what is it that you're bringing to the table? And in that little green box there, we're showing that there is some kind of pairing of utilities that know how to kind of make sense of control plane instructions, if you will. So when we're onboarding, that might include some provisioning aspects of the SaaS application. When you're dealing with identity, there might be some user management or whatever. And then all of that is fronted by an API that, again, will get deployed for you when we kick this off, and we'll see that a little bit later. Along the top there, I've got some light blue boxes that are we're trying to come up with a good name for these, but we call them point solutions for now. But really what that is if you think about some of the stuff that we've distributed in SaaS Factory, or some of the patterns and code-based artifacts that we have with regard to maybe a tenant isolation or some of these other patterns. Token vending machine is a really commonly used one. Bill actually wrote a blog on this, which is you have a policy that is tenant scoped, and you need to surround, say, an interaction between your compute layer and your storage layer with some IAM policies that govern that interaction and that access. You might use a token vending machine that dispenses a tenant specific version of an IAM policy to govern that access, right? And so we've tried to wrap those patterns up into reusable components that, again, rather than do it all yourself, or maybe look at the blog and try to re-implement it in whatever language you're using, you could use our components. And I've got a slide that'll talk to that a little bit later, but that's what the point solutions are. And those are just more or less illustrations of where we see this can go, right? We do have blogs and code on multi-tenant S3 and SQS, but we can see this expanding maybe into multi-tenant dashboards. And then that emerging future is just anything else that we might want to throw in there. But again, the idea being that you'd pull that in into your application just like you would any other component just to use it.
Excellent. And yeah, it looks like Bill has already jumped on this here and put a couple of links out there to the blogs you're referring to, Toby.
Nice.
So yeah, if you're interested in those, please feel free and take a look at those. A lot of great information in there. But the important concepts here is that we've taken all of that thought leadership that we put together over the last few years and applied that into this new solution.
Okay, so here we're going to dive into the left side. So pay attention to that yellow block here, because we're going to see that again later. Really, I'm just trying to denote the control plane here. This is a simplified version of what gets deployed, but as I said, there's an API gateway that sits in front of a couple of Lambda functions. Those Lambda functions are typically used in onboarding or in in your control plane, right? So you've got some notion of tenant management. Somebody elects to sign up. How do they get recorded in the system, and then how do they get provisioned, and then also what does it look like to authenticate this control plane for your provider, for your SaaS admins that might need to interact with this. I'm showing just a little, a client that might be a CLI, that might be a web app or something like that, but just know that it is authenticated through this API gateway. On the left there, that IAuth interface, you'll notice that we have it's actually an interface for plugging in whatever kind of provider or whatever kind of authentication provider you want. Within SBT, we've actually shipped with a Cognito version of that, but it's an interface, and there's no reason that you couldn't plug in, Auth0,
Auth0,
yeah, you name it, right? It's like it's compliant based, right? So we've got OAuth and OIDC under the hood. So you can, you just plug in whatever, as long as you could answer the functions that we're asking for, you can plug whatever you want in there. That's it for the control plane. Do notice that we are shipping messages to and from EventBridge. So this is all async based. EventBridge is kind of at the heart of this, where when we're asking to provision, we're putting a message on the bus, and then in a second we'll see that the application plane might pick that message up, do whatever it is asked of it, and then put another message on the bus indicating it's done or it failed or whatever.
So we're also, of course, using a lot of the best practices of generally developing applications on AWS, right? Using these excellent AWS services to assist us in those processes.
Absolutely, yeah. EventBridge is great. We're finding great success there.
Excellent.
Okay, so moving on to the purple box here, we're talking about the app plane. That we're trying to stay very unopinionated about what it means to be an application, a SaaS application, right? We're not trying to say that it has to, you have to have this or whatever else. And so to that end, the star of the show here is, again, EventBridge, that is really just pubbing and subbing messages that comply to a contract that we've specified. And then from that perspective, we don't really care what it is your application does or what it is, right? We're trying to say, hey, if you want to provision a new tenant into this application, we've got some utilities indicated in that in the CDK Labs, the lighter box here, that will let you listen to those. We'll basically wire up the plumbing for you. We'll listen to the messages. We'll provide a code build that's wrapped in a step function for you to deploy. If you provide us a script that for what it means to deploy your tenant, we'll run that script for you, and then we'll export whatever variables you tell us to, and the same is true of deprovisioning. So it's just some utilities there, but really, at the end of the day, your application is what it is. We're just doing what you tell us to do. So on the application plane side of things right now, really it is just the wiring for EventBridge, and then a couple of utilities to kind of bring your SaaS application to life.
Just a quick question on that too, then, since we're being very agnostic as far as, like you said, what constitutes the application that exists in the application plane. It can be virtually anything, right? Yeah. To work with SBT, though, are there specific hooks or features that you have to build into your application in order to kind of make this work together, or typically do things kind of just plug in out of the box?
So it's a great question. I think right now, given that everything is in CDK, the stuff on the left is going to be dropped into your application as a CDK construct. And if you don't know, if you're unfamiliar with CDK, there's great tutorials out there on what that is. But in effect, what CDK is just infrastructure as code. And so what we're doing is short-circuiting a bunch of infrastructure that you'd have to declare normally via the console or CloudFormation or anything else and we're declaring that as code that indicates what our application plane. And when we're with regard to the question of how the applications show up, once we deploy the application plane and we've hooked up to the events there, the only requirement is that you have that you're using that CDK app or that CDK component as a component. So to that end, you might need to be using TypeScript, right? CDK has a number of different languages that are involved there. You could use Python, you could use Java or whatever else. Right now we're shipping with TypeScript as the component. So the only requirement you have today would be to use JavaScript or the TypeScript library.
TypeScript. Yeah.
We'll expand that as we go along. But there's with regard to hooks or anything else, if you wanted to just drop into here and just hook up to the EventBridge yourself and not use our library, you're welcome to do that. It's just EventBridge messages. So you could look at some documentation, you could see the types and the sources and the details of those messages, and then just react to them on your own, and you could play along just as well.
Awesome. Excellent. For those of you that are joining us here a little bit late, you're currently watching Building SaaS on AWS, and I am joined today by a number of my colleagues from the AWS SaaS Factory, and we're talking about and introducing a new capability for our customers building SaaS called the SaaS Builder Toolkit. We're currently talking with Toby about the architecture around SBT, and Toby, is there maybe some code that we can look at, or we still have some more architecture?
We got one more.
Actually. I'm jumping ahead here. Okay.
So one of the things that Ujjwal mentioned at the top of this was that we're trying to provide a platform in which vendors, ISVs can, because if you think about a SaaS application, it's oftentimes not developed 100% in-house, right? Like you're pulling in partners that are really good at implementing certain aspects of your application, maybe identity, right? Who wants to write an identity provider? So you might be pulling in Cognito, you might be pulling in Auth0, something like that. And billing, you might be pulling in some other partner to do that, and which is kind of I'm foreshadowing another guest we have here in just a second. But so to that end, we're trying to provide natural abstractions of those pieces, right? So we've got an iBilling provider, which is just an interface that is, if you implement it, we can hook up to whatever billing is kind of behind that implementation, behind that abstraction. But we do provide, in that yellow box, we do provide a couple of things in there to help manage with that, and then just defer to the provider to take care of the heavy lifting, right? Like if we're going to collect the events for you potentially, or provide some interfaces for you to collect the events. But when it comes to actually generating the bill and doing all the things and handling payment and all that other stuff, we don't want to get involved, but we'll let you,
the billing provider side, handle that. Right?
Pick whatever you want, right?
Stripe or an internal solution or whatever it may be. Yeah.
Exactly. So just showing here that within the yellow box, the control plane, we've got some stuff that we'll deploy on your behalf, and then you have to implement whatever it is that you have to implement the abstraction that's specific for a provider. But the beauty thing is that if we're providing an open platform, we could have ISVs come in and play along with us, right? And so Stripe or MOSAIQ, as we'll see, they might come in and implement their version of it, and then as a application developer, all you're doing is now npm installing CDK Labs, SBT, AWS, but also whatever component that they've implemented and published npm, right? So that's the beauty part of this architecture. That's really what we're striving for, is create a community, right? The fantasy version of this is that it just builds itself,
right?
And so that's what we're shooting for. I think that is it for slides for right now, but we could jump over to some code.
Please do.
All right, so here we are. I just took a standard, again, we're talking CDK now. This is straight out of the tutorial for CDK. So if I go to, I've actually overwritten this file, but if you follow along in the CDK hello version, you'll see that there's just, the standard hello world function that you'd always write in whatever new programming language. You've got the same thing going on in CDK. So there's a stack. This CDK has this notion of stacks, and within stacks, you've got constructs. This is really the entry point into our application. So we're creating a new CDK app, and you'll notice that I'm just newing up a control plane stack, which we'll look at that in a second, as well as an application plane stack, and that's really it, right? And so this is a dead simple control plane. The only thing it does is really provide some wiring to the application plane. You notice that this is kind of talking to the point that we made earlier regarding this IAuth, right? So there's just an interface here that will
currently going to Cognito right now, right?
Yep, exactly. Yep, we want to spin this control plane up, but we want to make sure that there's some authentication and some authorization going on there, and we want, in this case, just to use Cognito to do that. So here we're just newing up our version of it, and you can see that that's coming out of our package. But again, if it were a partner, it'd be coming out of their package, so long as it complied with the interface. And then we're just newing up the control plane, and we're passing that off to that to satisfy that requirement. If I didn't have this, it would say, hey, no, you need to provide that, right? So you need there has to be an auth for this control plane.
Makes sense.
And then if we look at the app plane side of things, again, dead simple application plane. this guy is doing nothing other than providing a bucket per tenant, right? That's the only thing that we care about. Bigger. Is this too big, or should I?
Yeah, it's fine. It's okay. It scrolls off a little bit to the right, but you're good.
Okay. So again, an app plane stack, we want to deploy a bucket, and this is our this is what we're providing. So when we listen to, in this case, we're provisioning, right? So as I said, there's some utilities that we provide that can listen to various events that the control plane will send. In this case, we're listening to a provisioning event, and we're providing it a script on what it should do once it gets that. Once it gets that event.
Yeah, so that provisioning event is something that's executed by SBT or sends out an event through EventBridge from SBT that says, hey, we're provisioning new resources, and in our case, we're building an S3 bucket as a part of that, right?
Correctly. Yeah, that is exactly right. Again, very, very simple, probably contrived, but hopefully it brings the point home. We're listening to an incoming event of the onboarding request, and if it finishes successfully, we'll send us a provisioning success message, right? And so the control plane would presumably tune into that message to add some tenant to a table or do something else, right? So in this case, we're expecting to pull a tenant ID and a tier off of the incoming event bus message, and then what we're saying here is that we're going to return these variables back to the event bus once we're finished. You could see
this would take place. Yeah, just a quick question. So this would take place then during the process of, let's say, adding a new tenant, right? So we would be provisioning these resources for the new tenant as a part of this. Right?
Yeah, as I said, we've got a number of different events that we detail, as long with kind of where they're going and what in EventBridge, there's basically a source, a destination, and a type, and that's how you can kind of filter those events and act on them if you want. Yeah, so we're in this case, we're tuning in to a particular set of events and then doing a particular thing, right? So all we're this would be the script that I mentioned, right? It's you can notice it's just a bash script. We're creating a stack that is based on, and we're just calling it tenant template stack, and we're feeding it this stack template, and that's it. And we're exporting some variables. Exporting this variable called tenant config, which is just a JSON document that includes some tenant specific stuff, and we're calling it done.
Awesome.
And then we're creating the application plane itself with that provisioning job, and that's it. And we've handled it. Once we're done with that, we've deployed that. Again, what's happening is we've got the control planes up and running. We've got the APIs, we've got all the functions there, but now we've also got some EventBridge targets, as well as filter, listening for events, and then the job here that's wrapped inside a step function.
Just to add a little bit more here, so at line 72 is where that core application pane is the SBT component you would pull in, and then you are at line 74, you are passing in the script or the properties, which kind of like Toby has alluded here, which helps you with the onboarding. So with that component, and when you plug in those properties in, what you get out of the box here is like during the onboarding, the component is taking care of provisioning that infrastructure, which is supplied as a part of that property, which is Toby's highlighting. So that's what you're getting out of the box there.
Very nice. This looks fantastic, Toby. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think from that is the dead simple version of it. What I would want to do, well, give me 1 second, is encourage everybody to take a look. We do have a repo, obviously, that has kind of a tutorial in there. And give me 1 second, Anthony. I'm going to share my screen again.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, so all of this should be available, as Toby is mentioning. We have this code available. It's out on the GitHub repo as of today. You should be able to get access to it yourself. We really want and encourage everyone to download it, try it out. Let us know what you think about it. Bring it up here. Here we go, Toby.
Okay, great. So just showing here, this is the SBT. I'll have links to that in a second, but this is the SBT AWS repo. And again, I mentioned the README document that's here in the docs public. It's really just a kind of a tutorial that more or less goes through the same thing that we just went through. So talks to you a little bit about CDK as a general concept, and then dives into the details here with regard to SBT and how we take advantage of the CDK constructs.
Excellent. And of course, just for everybody's understanding too, we're just introducing this, right? I mean, this is the first conversation that we're having with our audience today about SBT. There's a lot more coming down the road, including ultimately we'll have a workshop built around this that we're excited to see, to help walk you through and really help you to understand how to utilize this new capability. But yeah, this is excellent so far. So, Toby, you'd mentioned before, this concept of point solutions, and can you talk a little bit more about that, and also maybe, we talked about ISVs maybe being able to add extensions to SBT as well, and how that plays together.
Absolutely, yeah. So we've got this notion of point solutions. Remember, I mentioned before. Am I still sharing?
Yes.
Okay, so we mentioned the token vending machine as an example here. Again, the idea being that if there's code that you might find in a blog and it might be written in Python or it might be written in some other language, right? We wanted to kind of package that up and be able to bring that in a way that would just kind of drop into your app. You could see what it's doing. You could take advantage of best practices kind of built into there. And here you see an example of what that might look like, right? So this we're pulling in, again, CDK like, but in this case it's a Node app. We're newing up this token vending machine, and we're doing the things that the token vending machine does, except as is kind of like object oriented, right? So this is an object that comes in. It has roles and methods and functions on it that behave the way we hopefully declaratively like you'd expect. So we want to assume a role whenever we interact with this DynamoDB, right? So this is a tenant specific role, and this handles all of that for you. If you were to read, again, I know that Bill dropped the link in there. If you were to read that blog post, it'd go through the why of why you do that and what that token brings to the table. But this is a kind of a generic abstraction of that code that you could use across various resources that you could lock down with IAM.
Makes sense. So this allows you to basically componentize that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then this other version here, it's an illustration, but from pulling in a multi-tenant S3 bucket, we've got another blog out there that talks about if you've got S3 and you want to basically keep tenants isolated within folders within that bucket. Here's how you might do that. And we have a version of that again wraps all of that stuff up in a single component so that you can instantiate that in your application.
Awesome. So if ISVs wanted to do this, they would basically follow this same process. If they had extensions to SBT, for instance, that they wanted to make, or maybe if you were even just reusing code across multiple SaaS applications, for instance, you could use this capability.
Absolutely. Yep. The other part to your second part of that question, which was, how would you plug in and I don't want to steal the thunder here too much because I know we're bringing MOSAIQ guys on to chat about their stuff, but how would you plug in a billing provider, right? So if we have, in this case, we're using MOSAIQ, and again, I'll let them talk to their solution. It's really awesome what they bring to the table. But if you're bringing MOSAIQ into the application, this is a CDK component that in this case we're pulling in from their repo, again, not our repo, right? So they've just implemented our interface. They drop in here. We've got their capabilities all packaged up in a nice CDK component, and it drops into the control plane just like something like our IAuth application or IAuth implementation.
Oh, amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you for going through all of that, Toby. I think without further ado, we probably want to bring in our next guest as well. And so I would like to go ahead and bring onto the stage here Derek Gilling and Nigel Thomas, both from MOSAIQ Building. Welcome to both of you. Derek, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. Thanks for having us here, Anthony and team. My name is Derek Gilling. I'm the CEO of MOSAIQ. We're the leading API analytics and monetization platform. So our focus around usage-based billing. And super happy to be building this SBT integration. So it makes it super easy for you to get set up, and it's a modular approach.
Excellent. And Nigel, welcome as well. You want to introduce yourself?
You might be on mute.
I think maybe we're having an audio problem there. Oh, well, welcome to the show. In any case, Nigel, we'll get to you if we can. Rupesh, I know you've been working with MOSAIQ quite a bit here, and with other ISVs as well, and integrations here to SBT. Can you tell us a little bit about, and maybe this is a question for Derek too, but who MOSAIQ is, what you do, and what was this integration that you built for SBT?
Yeah, I'll let Derek talk about what MOSAIQ does. He's the CEO of MOSAIQ, and I just want to touch upon SBT real quick here. So like we mentioned, SBT is an open source solution, and no open source solution will evolve without community leaning into it and building more applications into it, right? So that's where and the best part of SBT is having these ISV integrations, and that's where MOSAIQ has built the first external SBT plugin. And I'll give the mic to Derek to actually talk about what MOSAIQ does.
Sure, definitely. And thanks for having us here, Rupesh. Was great to work with you. Just a quick overview of MOSAIQ. We handle all the boring stuff around usage-based billing. And so that includes provisioning a subscription, ingesting raw events, doing the aggregation, and then finally doing the metering. So for this customer, how many API calls do they have for the month, or handling prepaid credits and the like. Of course, that's a lot of boring stuff. And so just like when we look at SBT, there's a lot of different modules that you need to implement for any type of multi-tenant based application, whether it's going back to authentication to the billing. And so for MOSAIQ, we actually implemented this iBilling interface so that we can interact with MOSAIQ and then just instantiate our module without really adding anything else that's needed. So in this case, for example, when a tenant is provisioned within the control plane of SBT, we're going to provision a subscription as well and put that in an active state. We're going to link it to the necessary plans and prices and everything else. When a tenant is deprovisioned, we can also go ahead and cancel that subscription. And that's all handled through that event bridge that's relayed into MOSAIQ. The other piece to it is how do we actually meter usage? And so we are agnostic to how that data is ingested into MOSAIQ. The nice thing is we do deploy a Kinesis fire hose. And so you can actually inject your raw events directly into that fire hose for us to pick up and then meter from that. Those events can come from your application directly. It can come from an Amazon API Gateway instance that you're running. Our goal is for you to get that data and then don't have to deal with all the wiring and the glue logic that you normally have to do for billing. On the flip side of it, we also have a lot of different modules that you can hook in. So if you want to run your payments through Stripe, we have a plugin for Stripe. Same thing with Zora if you want to run your payments through Zora, or even Amazon Marketplace. You want to build your Marketplace extension and put that on there. You can also run that through there.
Amazing.
That's great. So Derek, how was your experience integrating into SBT and creating this plugin for SBT?
It was awesome. It was the first time, we were actually looking at CDK itself also. So it was a great learning experience. We're quite familiar with CloudFormation, Terraform, and the like. And so, if you've ever worked with those tools, you'll feel right at home. One nice thing is going back to the fact that it is open source. So a lot of examples, you can dig right into the code and get the hello example up and running. So we were able to build this pretty quickly, especially with the support and everything else that was around.
Yeah, so you were able to build a plugin in a sprint, right?
Yeah, it was a single sprint. So
Nice.
Really great to see how we can build that type of solution. And again, I'm a big believer in having this modular approach. So if you want to use MOSAIQ, you use MOSAIQ. If you want to use something else, you want to have a custom solution, super easy to see how you can pick and choose which components you want to have.
Sure. So as a SaaS application developer yourself, like what is that one thing that you want to talk about SBT to other SaaS builders out there and how it will benefit them?
Sure. Just from a high level, deploying a SaaS, there's a lot of things you have to think about. There's of course the product market fit and getting customers using your platform itself, and what are the right features that you want to focus on for your core application. But there's still a lot of the boring stuff they had to build. Every SaaS application needs billing. Every SaaS application needs a way to do identity management. There's analytics and everything else. And so one of the great things I see here with SBT is it provides the right framework and boilerplate to implement those things without being opinionated. So for example, going back to authentication, you can choose whether to use Cognito or Auth0 or Okta or something else as your identity solution. Same thing for billing, right? You can use MOSAIQ, but you can implement your own solution as well. There's no requirement to use MOSAIQ as the billing solution of choice. And so I'm a big believer in picking the right modules for the right use case based off of your requirements.
Yeah, that's great.
Same
I think
here.
that the componentized part of SBT is the best part that we are offering here as part of the solution. That allows the developers to like pick and choose whichever component they want. And like Derek mentioned, he's a SaaS developer himself, so he's the first-hand experience with the solution right out there.
I wish this was around when we started MOSAIQ. we could have used this, but there's definitely a lot of boring things that you usually have to build for every SaaS application.
Well, thank you so much, Derek and Nigel and your team for really leaning in with us and helping us to make SBT a great first launch and being unfortunately in some cases a little bit of a guinea pig, right, in trying to implement. It sounds like things went really well though, so I'm really happy to hear that, and we're of course extremely excited to continue working with MOSAIQ into the future, building upon what we've already started here. So thanks so much for being a part of this. We're getting
on that.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Just piling on there. I really think you guys are great with taking the licks with as we fumble down this road. It's good to have the back and forth too, just to have a real world perspective as we apply it, and the iterative nature of software development really playing out to make things better in the long run. Again, that open source community is awesome.
And yeah, absolutely. And if there are any other ISVs out there that are, taking a look at what we're talking about here today and have some ideas for additional extensions, these point solutions, whatever we ultimately end up calling these in the long run, if you have some ideas or are interested in working with us and building one of these point solutions out for your IP, please let us know. We're really excited to hear from the community. We want the community to be involved in this. As Toby was just saying, this is open source. We want this to be successful, but it really takes all of us working together on the AWS side and in the community side to really make a success here. So let us know if you're interested. That being said, we're getting a little bit short on time here, so do have a couple of other last questions that I have, though, before we kind of wrap up. And one question that I would have is, are there any examples of reference architectures which we're already using or implementations of SBT at this point in time, Toby?
Yeah, that is a great question. I'm sharing my screen now. We've got.
Let me bring that up real quick. Hold on 1 second. Sorry. There we go.
We've built 3 different reference architectures. The EKS SaaS reference architecture, ECS SaaS reference architecture, which is brand new, and the serverless SaaS reference architecture. So they're all they were all kind of invented and developed before SBT. They've since been kind of repurposed, or not repurposed, but let's say ported to SBT, so that the stuff that is reusable across them is now showing up in SBT itself. So definitely take a look at those guys. You can see again the power of SBT in there, and how it removes a lot of the boilerplate stuff. Like, again, the boring code that Derek alluded to earlier.
Very, very nice. Yeah, it's exciting to see these solutions that we've been talking about for years now kind of rewritten in this new framework. So definitely use the QR codes here. Take a look at these if you're interested in them. As implementations of SBT, it's a fantastic place to start from, especially if you know that if you're already looking at, say, using Kubernetes, for instance, that we have an instance of SBT or a reference of SBT that is around EKS that you could go ahead and take a look at. Fantastic. And finally, looking forward a little bit into the future here. We're just introducing SBT kind of live to the community, but how do we see SBT evolving in the near future? And what are some of the additional calls to action maybe for the community that we have?
I think we've covered a lot of those already in terms of roadmap. We do have a backlog of stuff that we're working on. Mostly fit and finish, filling out the stuff that's missing. But we also just love to hear from the community, right? If you look in the repo right now, you'll notice that there's some conversations that are happening actually right now about what form it should take. How are we handling certain, aspects of billing, for instance, and some other API additions. So really trying to take it in the direction that the community leads us. But we will have a roadmap project more or less up there with swim lane to talk about, near term, far term. And so be looking for that soon. Just maybe store the repo and you'll get the updates there. But yeah, that's where we want to go. We do keep wanting to build out these abstractions, right? So billing is one, a big one, identity, and maybe trying to get other ISVs to participate in that as well.
Excellent. Well, everyone, we are rapidly approaching our time together here. I want to make a big thank you to everybody that's been a part of SBT, not just the crew that's here on Twitch with us today, but there's a larger group of folks that have been involved with SBT in the SaaS Factory, and I'm sure at MOSAIQ as well. So thank you to everybody that's helped to make this a success. And to the community, definitely go out, take a look at it. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. Both of those are very, very, very important. Reach out to us with any questions or comments that you may have. And if you like what you see and you're planning to dig in and utilize SBT, we want to know that too, right? So let us know if you're planning to utilize SBT. And there's going to be more coming, right? We'll be talking about SBT a lot more, both just in the SaaS Factory in general and maybe here on Building SaaS and AWS into the future. But Rupesh, Toby, Ujval, Nigel, and Derek, thank you all so much for being with us here today. And to all of you that have joined us here on Twitch live today, thank you all so much as well for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed what we've brought to you. I hope that you all go out and take a look at SBT and give us feedback. We're definitely looking forward to that as well. And in any case, I want to wish you all happy building over the next couple of weeks until we return once again with our next show here on Building SaaS with AWS. Until then, bye-bye. Happy building.
Everybody.